Question 1. System analysis indicates that a registered public safety leader, RPSL, is tasked with re-evaluating the organizational structure of their agency to enhance operational responsiveness and accountability. The agency currently operates with a highly centralized command structure, where all significant operational decisions are routed through the director's office. This has led to reported delays in critical incident response and a perception among frontline staff of being disempowered. The RPSL is considering several potential structural adjustments. Which of the following adjustments, if implemented, would best align with principles of effective public safety leadership and regulatory expectations for efficient service delivery, while also fostering a culture of empowered frontline operations? Option A. Further centralize all operational decision-making authority to the Director's Office to ensure absolute uniformity and control over all public safety responses. Option B. Introduce a matrix departmentalization structure where all personnel report to both a functional manager and a project manager, allowing for maximum flexibility but potentially blurring lines of authority. Option C. Implement a hybrid model that retains centralized strategic oversight and policy development, but empowers unit commanders with greater autonomy for tactical decision-making within defined parameters, supported by enhanced inter-unit communication protocols and regular cross-departmental training. Option D. Significantly decentralize all decision-making authority to the lowest possible level without establishing clear guidelines or oversight mechanisms for tactical operations. Correct answer is C. Implement a hybrid model that retains centralized strategic oversight and policy development, but empowers unit commanders with greater autonomy for tactical decision-making within defined parameters, supported by enhanced inter-unit communication protocols and regular cross-departmental training. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining robust public safety oversight and fostering agile, responsive operational units. A registered public safety leader, RPSL, must balance the need for clear lines of authority and accountability, as mandated by regulatory frameworks governing public safety organizations, with the imperative to empower frontline personnel to make timely decisions in dynamic environments. The RPSL judgment is critical in designing an organizational structure that supports both compliance and effectiveness. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principles of effective public safety leadership, emphasizing clear communication channels, defined roles, and appropriate delegation. This structure ensures that, while strategic direction and policy adherence are maintained at higher levels, operational units have the autonomy and support to execute their duties efficiently. This fosters a culture of trust and responsibility, which is crucial for morale and performance in high-stakes public safety roles. Regulatory frameworks often implicitly or explicitly support such structures by requiring clear command and control mechanisms, while also encouraging operational efficiency and adaptability. An incorrect approach that centralizes all decision-making power at the top would fail to leverage the expertise of frontline personnel, leading to delays in response and potentially compromising public safety. This could be seen as a failure to implement best practices in organizational design and could, in extreme cases, violate implicit regulatory expectations for efficient and effective service delivery. Another incorrect approach that decentralizes too broadly without adequate oversight or standardized procedures could lead to inconsistencies in service delivery and a breakdown in accountability. This might contravene regulatory requirements for uniform application of policies and procedures, potentially exposing the organization to legal and ethical risks. A third incorrect approach that creates overly complex departmentalization without clear interdepartmental communication protocols would hinder collaboration and create silos. This would impede the integrated response necessary for many public safety incidents and could lead to inefficiencies and a lack of coordinated action, failing to meet the spirit of regulatory expectations for seamless public safety operations. The professional reasoning process for an RPSL in this situation should involve a thorough assessment of the organization's mission, the nature of its operations, and the specific regulatory environment. This includes evaluating the current hierarchical structure, the span of control for various leadership roles, and the degree of centralization or decentralization. The RPSL should consider how departmentalization supports or hinders collaboration and communication. Ultimately, the decision should prioritize a structure that ensures clear accountability, promotes effective communication and collaboration, and allows for timely and informed decision-making at all levels, in full compliance with all applicable regulations and ethical standards. Question 2. Operational review demonstrates that intelligence has been received indicating a potential, but unconfirmed, threat to a critical public infrastructure facility. The information is credible enough to warrant serious consideration, but lacks definitive proof of intent or capability. As the Registered Public Safety Leader, RPSL, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to manage this risk while adhering to legal and ethical obligations? Option A. Initiate a phased risk assessment process involving intelligence analysis, threat evaluation, and the development of proportionate mitigation strategies, while simultaneously preparing for potential escalation and maintaining discreet surveillance. Option B. Defer action until definitive proof of the threat is obtained, focusing resources on routine operations and advising relevant personnel to remain vigilant without specific operational changes. Option C. Engage external security consultants to conduct an independent assessment and provide recommendations, while continuing with standard operational procedures until their report is finalized. Option D. Immediately implement a full lockdown of the affected facility and surrounding areas, deploying all available security personnel to establish a wide perimeter and issue a public alert detailing the perceived threat. The correct answer is A. Initiate a phased risk assessment process involving intelligence analysis, threat evaluation, and the development of proportionate mitigation strategies, while simultaneously preparing for potential escalation and maintaining discreet surveillance. Explanation. This scenario presents a significant professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining operational continuity and ensuring public safety, particularly when faced with a potential, albeit unconfirmed, threat. The Registered Public Safety Leader, RPSL, must balance the need for swift action to protect the public with the imperative to avoid overreacting based on incomplete information, which could lead to unnecessary disruption, resource misallocation, and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to assess the credibility and potential impact of the information received. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, evidence-based risk assessment process aligned with established public safety protocols and legal frameworks. This involves a multifaceted evaluation of the threat's likelihood and potential severity, considering all available intelligence. Developing targeted mitigation strategies based on this assessment ensures that resources are deployed effectively and proportionally, minimizing unnecessary disruption while maximizing public protection. This aligns with the RPSL duty of care and the principles of responsible risk management, which are foundational to maintaining public trust and operational integrity. Adherence to legal liabilities, including the duty to act reasonably and prudently, is paramount. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate, drastic measures without a thorough assessment fails to meet the standard of reasonable care. This could lead to legal liabilities arising from actions taken without sufficient justification, potentially causing harm or undue distress to the public or infringing on individual rights. Such an approach also demonstrates a failure to develop appropriate risk mitigation strategies, instead opting for a broad, potentially excessive response. Another incorrect approach that involves ignoring or downplaying the potential threat, despite credible indicators, represents a failure in risk identification and assessment. This could result in significant legal liabilities if an incident occurs due to inaction or insufficient preparedness. Ethically, it constitutes a dereliction of the RPSL duty to protect the public. A third incorrect approach that relies solely on external advice without independent critical evaluation or integration into the RPSL own risk framework, also professionally deficient. While consultation is valuable, the ultimate responsibility for risk management and decision-making rests with the RPSL. Failure to exercise independent judgment and integrate advice into a comprehensive strategy can lead to gaps in understanding and preparedness, potentially exposing the organization to unforeseen liabilities. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Information gathering and verification. Actively seek and verify all available information related to the potential threat. 2. Risk assessment. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the likelihood and potential impact of the threat, considering various scenarios. 3. Strategy development. Formulate a range of mitigation strategies, from immediate containment to long-term prevention, considering proportionality and resource availability. 4. Consultation and collaboration. Engage relevant stakeholders, including legal counsel, intelligence agencies, and operational units, to inform decision-making. 5. Decision and implementation. Make a clear, documented decision based on the risk assessment and chosen strategies and implement it effectively. 6. Monitoring and review. Continuously monitor the situation, review the effectiveness of implemented strategies, and adapt as necessary. 7. Communication. Develop and execute a clear, transparent crisis communication plan. Question 3. During the evaluation of public safety units' response to a sudden increase in critical incidents, a registered public safety leader, RPSL, observes significant team stress, inconsistent application of new emergency protocols, and a decline in morale. The RPSL needs to implement a strategy that not only ensures adherence to the updated protocols, but also rebuilds team cohesion and resilience. Considering the RPSL mandate to maintain operational readiness and ethical conduct, which leadership approach would be most effective in navigating this complex situation? Option A. Focusing solely on a transformational leadership style, inspiring the team with a vision of overcoming adversity and achieving excellence, without detailed emphasis on the immediate procedural adjustments. Option B. Employing an adaptive leadership style that emphasizes understanding the root causes of resistance to new protocols, fostering open dialogue about the challenges, and collaboratively developing solutions, while leveraging emotional intelligence to manage team anxieties and build trust. Option C. Implementing a strictly transactional leadership approach, clearly outlining the consequences of noncompliance with new protocols and offering incentives for immediate adherence, thereby ensuring rapid adoption. Option D. Adopting a servant leadership model, prioritizing the immediate personal needs and comfort of each team member, and deferring the implementation of new protocols until team members express full readiness. The correct answer is B. Employing an adaptive leadership style that emphasizes understanding the root causes of resistance to new protocols, fostering open dialogue about the challenges, and collaboratively developing solutions while leveraging emotional intelligence to manage team anxieties and build trust. Explanation. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation for a registered public safety leader, RPSL, due to the inherent complexities of managing a diverse team facing significant operational changes. The challenge lies in balancing the need for immediate compliance with new protocols, maintaining team morale, and fostering a culture of continuous improvement, all while adhering to the stringent ethical and operational guidelines governing public safety leadership. Careful judgment is required to select a leadership style that is not only effective in the short term, but also sustainable and ethically sound. The correct approach, focusing on adaptive leadership and emotional intelligence, represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the human element of change. Adaptive leadership acknowledges that the challenges are not merely technical, but also deeply cultural and emotional, requiring leaders to guide their teams through discomfort and uncertainty. Emotional intelligence is crucial for understanding and managing the team's reactions, building trust, and fostering open communication. This approach aligns with the RPSL ethical duty to prioritize the well-being of their personnel while ensuring operational effectiveness and public safety, as mandated by the overarching principles of responsible public service leadership. An approach solely focused on transactional leadership, while ensuring immediate adherence to new protocols through rewards and punishments, fails to address the underlying resistance or anxiety within the team. This can lead to superficial compliance without genuine buy-in, potentially undermining long-term effectiveness and morale. Ethically, it risks treating personnel as mere instruments rather than valued individuals, neglecting the duty of care. A purely transformational approach, while inspiring, might overlook the practical, immediate needs for clear direction and structure during a period of significant change, potentially leading to confusion or a lack of accountability if not grounded in concrete actions. A servant leadership approach, while prioritizing team needs, might be too slow to implement necessary, potentially unpopular, changes required for immediate public safety concerns, thus failing the primary duty to the public. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the nature of the change, the team's current capacity and emotional state, and the immediate operational imperatives. Leaders must then select and adapt their style, drawing on a repertoire of theories and skills to effectively guide the team. This involves active listening, empathetic communication, clear articulation of vision and expectations, and a willingness to be flexible and responsive to feedback, all within the established regulatory and ethical framework. Question 4. System analysis indicates that a registered public safety leader, RPSL, has discovered that a subordinate with whom they have a long-standing personal friendship has been consistently violating a critical safety protocol. The leader is aware that a formal investigation and disciplinary action are required, but the personal relationship creates a significant ethical dilemma regarding impartiality and the potential for perceived favoritism. What is the most appropriate course of action for the RPSL to take in this situation? Option A. Immediately recommend severe disciplinary action, including termination, to demonstrate impartiality and a commitment to protocol without a formal investigation. Option B. Confront the subordinate privately, express disappointment, and accept their assurance that the behavior will not be repeated without initiating formal procedures. Option C. Immediately initiate a formal investigation into the subordinate's conduct, ensuring all findings are documented, and recuse themselves from any decision-making processes related to disciplinary actions concerning this subordinate, referring the matter to a higher authority or designated impartial body. Option D. Overlook the repeated violations due to the personal friendship, assuming the subordinate will eventually correct their behavior on their own. The correct answer is C. Immediately initiate a formal investigation into the subordinate's conduct, ensuring all findings are documented, and recuse themselves from any decision-making processes related to disciplinary actions concerning this subordinate, referring the matter to a higher authority or designated impartial body. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a leader's duty to uphold organizational integrity and the personal relationship with a subordinate who has engaged in misconduct. The leader must navigate this situation with impartiality, ensuring that professional standards and ethical obligations are prioritized over personal sentiment. The RPSL role demands a commitment to fairness, transparency, and accountability, as outlined in professional codes of conduct and ethical guidelines. The correct approach involves a structured, objective process that prioritizes the integrity of the organization and the fairness of the disciplinary process. This aligns with the RPSL responsibility to act with integrity and accountability, ensuring that all individuals are treated equitably and that organizational policies are consistently applied. By initiating a formal review and recusing themselves from direct involvement in the investigation and decision-making concerning the subordinate, the leader demonstrates professionalism and avoids any perception of bias or favoritism. This upholds the principle of maintaining professional boundaries and addresses the conflict of interest directly and ethically. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the misconduct due to the personal relationship. This failure directly violates the ethical obligation to act with integrity and uphold codes of conduct, which mandate reporting and addressing all instances of misconduct, regardless of personal connections. Such inaction creates an environment where unethical behavior is tolerated, undermining organizational trust and potentially leading to more significant issues. Another incorrect approach would be to confront the subordinate informally and accept a superficial apology without further action. This demonstrates a lack of accountability and a failure to adhere to established disciplinary procedures. It also fails to address the conflict of interest appropriately, as the leader remains involved in a situation where their impartiality is compromised. This approach risks setting a precedent of leniency for those with personal connections, eroding fairness and professionalism. A third incorrect approach would be to immediately recommend severe disciplinary action without a proper investigation, driven by a desire to appear impartial or to overcompensate for the personal relationship. While seemingly decisive, this bypasses due process and can lead to an unjust outcome. It fails to uphold the principle of fairness and can damage the leader's credibility and the trust within the organization. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a multi-step process. First, recognizing the potential conflict of interest and the ethical implications of the situation. Second, consulting relevant organizational policies and professional codes of conduct. Third, documenting the situation and the identified conflict. Fourth, seeking guidance from appropriate internal or external ethics advisors or legal counsel. Fifth, taking appropriate action to mitigate the conflict, which may include recusal from decision-making processes. Finally, ensuring that all actions are transparent, fair, and consistent with ethical principles and regulatory requirements. Question 5. Process analysis reveals that a registered public safety leader's department is facing an unexpected 15% budget shortfall for the upcoming fiscal year due to unforeseen operational demands. The leader must develop a strategy to address this deficit while ensuring continued delivery of essential public safety services and maintaining compliance with all relevant procurement and financial regulations. Which of the following strategies best reflects a compliant and professionally sound approach to managing this budget shortfall? Option A. Focus solely on increasing departmental fees for services rendered to offset the budget deficit, without considering the potential impact on public access to services or exploring other cost-saving measures. Option B. Prioritize securing emergency funding through informal channels and expedite procurement of necessary supplies, using sole-source contracts to quickly address immediate needs, bypassing standard review processes to save time. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of all departmental expenditures to identify areas for potential savings and efficiencies, explore all eligible grant opportunities that align with departmental goals, and reevaluate procurement processes to ensure maximum value for money, all while adhering strictly to established financial planning and procurement guidelines. Option D. Immediately halt all non-essential training and delay the purchase of new equipment, even if it impacts long-term operational readiness, to cover the immediate shortfall, without a formal review of alternative funding or expenditure optimization. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of all departmental expenditures to identify areas for potential savings and efficiencies, explore all eligible grant opportunities that align with departmental goals, and reevaluate procurement processes to ensure maximum value for money, all while adhering strictly to established financial planning and procurement guidelines. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in public safety leadership, balancing immediate operational needs with long-term strategic financial planning, particularly when faced with unexpected funding shortfalls. The professional challenge lies in making decisions that are not only fiscally responsible, but also ethically sound and compliant with the regulatory framework governing public safety organizations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that resource allocation decisions do not compromise the safety and effectiveness of the public safety services provided, while also adhering to budgetary constraints and procurement regulations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic, data-driven, and compliant method for addressing the budget deficit. This involves a thorough review of existing expenditures, identification of potential efficiencies, and exploration of all legitimate funding avenues, including grant opportunities. Adherence to procurement regulations ensures transparency, fairness, and value for money, preventing waste and potential corruption. Ethical considerations are paramount, demanding that decisions are made in the public interest and do not disproportionately impact vulnerable populations or compromise essential services. This approach aligns with the principles of good governance and responsible stewardship of public funds, as mandated by the regulatory framework for registered public safety leaders. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate cost-cutting, without a comprehensive review, risks undermining long-term operational capacity and potentially violating procurement regulations if essential equipment is acquired through non-compliant channels. Another incorrect approach that relies heavily on unverified or ineligible grant applications without proper due diligence could lead to wasted staff time and resources, and potentially misrepresent the organization's financial needs to grant providers, which is an ethical breach. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes political expediency over sound financial planning and regulatory compliance could lead to short-sighted decisions that create greater financial instability in the future and erode public trust. Professional decision-making in such situations should involve a structured process. First, clearly define the problem and its scope. Second, gather all relevant data, including financial records, operational needs, and regulatory requirements. Third, identify and evaluate potential solutions, considering their financial implications, operational impact, and regulatory compliance. Fourth, consult with relevant stakeholders, including finance departments, operational commanders, and legal counsel. Fifth, select the most appropriate solution based on a comprehensive assessment of risks and benefits, ensuring it aligns with ethical principles and regulatory mandates. Finally, document the decision-making process and its rationale thoroughly. Question 6. Regulatory review indicates a need to enhance the effectiveness of incident response protocols within a public safety agency. As a registered public safety leader, RPSL, which approach best aligns with developing and implementing sustainable quality standards for process optimization? Option A. Rely on periodic supervisor observations and anecdotal feedback to identify areas for improvement, making ad hoc adjustments to protocols as issues arise. Option B. Conduct a thorough root cause analysis of identified response time discrepancies and protocol deviations, followed by the development and phased implementation of targeted process improvements, with ongoing performance monitoring and feedback loops. Option C. Implement a comprehensive training program on a newly adopted incident response software, focusing on user proficiency without a prior analysis of existing protocol inefficiencies. Option D. Mandate adherence to a revised set of protocols based on industry best practices, without specific data collection or analysis of their impact on the agency's unique operational context. The correct answer is C. Implement a comprehensive training program on a newly adopted incident response software, focusing on user proficiency without a prior analysis of existing protocol inefficiencies. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in public safety leadership, balancing the need for robust quality assurance with the practical constraints of resource allocation and operational demands. A registered public safety leader, RPSL, must demonstrate a commitment to continuous improvement, not just as a theoretical concept, but as an embedded practice within their organization. This requires a strategic approach to developing and implementing quality standards that are both effective and sustainable. The correct approach emphasizes a data-driven, systematic methodology for process optimization. This aligns directly with the principles of continuous improvement, which are fundamental to maintaining high standards in public safety. By focusing on identifying root causes of performance deviations and implementing targeted interventions, an RPSL can ensure that quality improvements are meaningful and lead to demonstrable enhancements in service delivery. This proactive and analytical stance is crucial for meeting accreditation standards and demonstrating accountability to the public and regulatory bodies. Incorrect approaches often stem from a superficial understanding of quality assurance or a failure to integrate it into the core operational fabric. Implementing a new system without adequate training or buy-in from staff can lead to resistance and ineffectiveness, undermining the very goals of quality improvement. Relying solely on anecdotal evidence or reactive measures fails to address systemic issues and can result in a cycle of recurring problems. Furthermore, focusing on compliance for its own sake, rather than genuine improvement, can lead to a tick-box mentality that stifles innovation and true quality enhancement. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a structured approach. An RPSL should first clearly define the desired quality standards, ensuring they are measurable and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory requirements. Next, they must establish robust monitoring mechanisms to collect relevant performance data. This data should then be analyzed to identify trends, deviations, and areas for improvement. The selection of a continuous improvement methodology should be based on the nature of the identified issues and the organization's capacity. Finally, the implemented changes must be evaluated for their effectiveness, with a commitment to iterative refinement. This systematic process ensures that quality assurance is not an add-on, but an integral part of operational excellence. Question 7. Benchmark analysis indicates that a recent operational efficiency review has identified a potential process improvement that could significantly reduce response times for critical incidents. However, implementing this change may alter established work procedures for a group of unionized public safety officers. The collective bargaining agreement outlines a specific grievance procedure for addressing disputes related to working conditions and contract interpretation. The RPSL is under pressure to implement the efficiency measure quickly to enhance public safety outcomes. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements and professional best practices for a registered public safety leader in this situation? Option A. Immediately implement the proposed process improvement to realize the public safety benefits and address any union concerns that arise afterward through informal discussions. Option B. Delay the implementation of the process improvement indefinitely until a comprehensive review of all potential impacts on all unionized personnel can be completed to avoid any potential grievance. Option C. Inform the union that the proposed change is a management prerogative and will be implemented regardless of their input, citing the need for immediate operational enhancement. Option D. Initiate a formal consultation with the union leadership to discuss the proposed process improvement, explain its potential benefits, and collaboratively explore its implementation within the framework of the collective bargaining agreement and grievance procedures. The correct answer is A. Immediately implement the proposed process improvement to realize the public safety benefits and address any union concerns that arise afterward through informal discussions. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for operational efficiency with the long-term implications of employee morale and adherence to established labor relations protocols. A registered public safety leader, RPSL, must navigate the complexities of collective bargaining agreements and grievance procedures, while also ensuring fair treatment and clear communication with unionized staff. The core tension lies in potentially bypassing established processes for perceived expediency, which can undermine trust and create legal or ethical breaches. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the established regulatory framework and the collective bargaining agreement. By engaging the union leadership through the formal grievance procedure, the RPSL demonstrates respect for the negotiated process, upholds the rights of the employees and their representatives, and ensures that any resolution is documented and legally sound. This method mitigates the risk of unfair labor practice charges, grievance appeals, and damage to the ongoing labor management relationship. It aligns with the ethical imperative to treat all employees fairly and consistently, regardless of the perceived urgency of the situation. An incorrect approach that involves unilaterally implementing changes without consulting the union or following the grievance procedure fails to uphold the terms of the collective bargaining agreement. This can be construed as an unfair labor practice under relevant labor laws, as it bypasses the union's role as the exclusive bargaining representative for the employees. Such actions can lead to formal complaints, arbitration, and potential penalties, as well as a significant erosion of trust between management and the union. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the employee's concerns outright without investigation or adherence to the grievance process, is ethically unsound and legally risky. It violates the principle of due process for employees and can lead to claims of retaliation or discrimination. Furthermore, it ignores the contractual obligations established through collective bargaining, potentially opening the organization to legal challenges and reputational damage. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the collective bargaining agreement and applicable labor laws. When faced with a situation that could impact employees covered by a union contract, the RPSL should first consult the agreement to identify the relevant clauses regarding the issue at hand, including any provisions for operational changes or dispute resolution. If the situation involves a potential violation of the contract or an employee's rights, the immediate step should be to engage with the union representative through the established grievance procedure. This ensures that all parties are informed, that the process is followed correctly, and that any resolution is fair and compliant with both the contract and legal requirements. Documenting all communications and actions is crucial for accountability and future reference. Question 8. The performance metrics show a significant and sustained decline in response times for critical incidents in a specific sector, impacting public safety outcomes. As the registered public safety leader, RPSL, responsible for this sector, you are aware that this trend is causing concern among community stakeholders and internal oversight bodies. You have received anecdotal reports suggesting potential issues with resource allocation and team morale within the affected units, but no formal complaints have been lodged. What is the most appropriate course of action to address this situation? Option A. Publicly acknowledge the performance dip and assure stakeholders that immediate action is being taken without detailing the specific steps to manage public perception. Option B. Temporarily adjust the reporting thresholds for response times in that sector to align with the current performance levels, pending a future review. Option C. Immediately reassign the supervisors of the underperforming units to different roles, assuming their leadership is the primary cause of the decline. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive review of operational procedures, resource deployment, and team dynamics in the affected sector, gathering data and feedback to identify root causes before implementing any corrective measures. Correct answer is D. Initiate a comprehensive review of operational procedures, resource deployment, and team dynamics in the affected sector, gathering data and feedback to identify root causes before implementing any corrective measures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need to address underperformance with the long-term strategic imperative of maintaining ethical standards and regulatory compliance. A registered public safety leader, RPSL, must navigate the complexities of performance management while upholding the organization's mission, vision, and values, as well as adhering to relevant regulations. The pressure to achieve short-term results can create a temptation to overlook or downplay ethical concerns, which is a significant risk. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough, data-driven, and ethically sound investigation before implementing any corrective actions. This aligns with the principles of good governance and accountability expected of public safety leaders. By focusing on understanding the root causes of the performance issues, including potential systemic or individual factors, and ensuring that any interventions are fair, consistent, and compliant with established policies and regulations, the leader demonstrates a commitment to both effectiveness and integrity. This approach fosters trust, promotes a culture of continuous improvement, and mitigates the risk of unintended negative consequences or regulatory breaches. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate disciplinary action without a proper investigation would be professionally unacceptable. This would represent a failure to uphold due process and could lead to unfair or discriminatory outcomes, potentially violating employment law and organizational policies. It also ignores the possibility that the performance issues stem from factors beyond individual control, such as inadequate training, resources, or leadership. Another incorrect approach that involves manipulating performance metrics to present a more favorable picture would be a severe ethical and regulatory failure. This constitutes data falsification, undermining the integrity of the organization's performance management system and potentially misleading stakeholders. Such an action would violate principles of transparency and accountability and could have serious legal and reputational repercussions. A third incorrect approach that involves ignoring the performance issues altogether due to fear of negative publicity or political fallout would be a dereliction of duty. Public safety leaders have a responsibility to address performance deficiencies to ensure the effectiveness and safety of operations. Failing to do so compromises public trust and can lead to a decline in service quality and safety standards, violating the core mission of public safety organizations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Acknowledge and analyze the performance data objectively. 2. Initiate a fair and thorough investigation to identify root causes, considering all contributing factors. 3. Consult relevant policies, procedures, and legal/regulatory frameworks. 4. Develop and implement a plan that addresses identified issues ethically and effectively, ensuring due process. 5. Monitor the impact of interventions and adjust as necessary. 6. Maintain transparency and accountability throughout the process. Question 9. Implementation of a comprehensive public relations strategy for a public safety organization, considering a recent increase in community concerns regarding local crime rates, requires a leader to balance immediate information needs with long-term trust building. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the registered public safety leader, RPSL mandate for effective public relations and community engagement? Option A. Proactively engage with local media outlets to provide regular, verified updates on crime trends and prevention strategies, simultaneously initiating partnerships with community leaders and neighborhood watch groups to disseminate information and gather feedback, and launching a public education campaign on personal safety measures. Option B. Disseminate raw, unverified data regarding all reported incidents to social media platforms to ensure maximum transparency and immediate public awareness. Option C. Focus all communication efforts on internal operational improvements and defer any public statements until a significant reduction in crime is achieved. Option D. Issue a single, comprehensive press release detailing all available crime statistics and incident reports to the media, and then await public inquiries before further engagement. The correct answer is A. Proactively engage with local media outlets to provide regular, verified updates on crime trends and prevention strategies, simultaneously initiating partnerships with community leaders and neighborhood watch groups to disseminate information and gather feedback, and launching a public education campaign on personal safety measures. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between maintaining public trust and managing sensitive information during a potential crisis. A registered public safety leader, RPSL, must balance the immediate need for transparency with the long-term implications of information disclosure, all while adhering to strict regulatory frameworks and ethical obligations. The RPSL actions directly impact community perception, stakeholder confidence, and the effectiveness of public safety operations. Careful judgment is required to navigate the complexities of media relations, community outreach, and crisis communication in a manner that is both compliant and effective. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a proactive, multifaceted communication strategy that aligns with the RPSL mandate to serve and protect the public. This approach emphasizes building trust through consistent, accurate, and timely information dissemination, fostering partnerships with key community stakeholders, and leveraging public education to enhance preparedness and understanding. Specifically, it adheres to the principles of open communication and accountability often embedded in public safety regulations, ensuring that the public is informed and engaged, thereby strengthening the relationship between the safety organization and the community it serves. This proactive stance is crucial for mitigating the impact of potential crises and for building a resilient community. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reactive media engagement without proactive community outreach fails to build the necessary trust and understanding that can buffer against misinformation during a crisis. This approach risks alienating community members and can lead to a perception of secrecy or a lack of transparency, which is a significant ethical and regulatory failure in public safety leadership. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes the release of all information immediately, regardless of its verification or potential to cause panic, demonstrates a failure to exercise sound judgment and a disregard for the potential negative consequences on public order and safety. This can lead to regulatory scrutiny and ethical breaches related to responsible information management. An approach that neglects building partnerships with community organizations misses a critical opportunity to leverage existing networks for information dissemination and support during emergencies, thereby failing to meet the spirit of collaborative public safety efforts often encouraged by regulatory bodies. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough risk assessment, considering the potential impact of different communication strategies on public perception, operational effectiveness, and regulatory compliance. RPSL should establish clear communication protocols, identify key stakeholders, and develop pre-approved messaging frameworks for various scenarios. Regular training and drills in crisis communication are essential. Furthermore, a commitment to ethical principles, such as honesty, fairness, and accountability, should guide all public relations and community engagement efforts. The decision-making process must be iterative, allowing for adjustments based on evolving circumstances and feedback from the community and stakeholders. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate a caller reporting a terrible accident with sounds of distress in the background. The caller is audibly panicked and states, "He's not breathing, I think he's dead." Based on the Medical Priority Dispatch System, MPDS protocols, what is the most appropriate initial action for the registered public safety leader, RPSL, to take? Option A. Ask the caller to describe the accident in detail to understand the mechanism of injury before proceeding with any dispatch or protocol selection. Option B. Immediately dispatch an advanced life support, ALS ambulance, and initiate the cardiac arrest protocol based on the caller's statement of not breathing and dead. Option C. Advise the caller to perform CPR if they have been trained, while simultaneously attempting to gather more information about the nature of the accident. Option D. Follow the MPDS script to determine the chief complaint, asking specific questions about breathing, consciousness, and pulse to accurately classify the situation and assign the appropriate priority. Correct answer is B. Immediately dispatch an advanced life support (ALS) ambulance and initiate the cardiac arrest protocol based on the caller's statement of not breathing and dead. Explanation: this scenario presents a significant professional challenge due to the inherent tension between immediate perceived urgency and the systematic application of established protocols. The RPSL must balance the emotional distress of the caller with the need for accurate information gathering to ensure appropriate resource allocation. The core of the challenge lies in the potential for misclassification and misprioritization, which can have life-or-death consequences. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it adheres strictly to the Medical Priority Dispatch System (MPDS) protocols. This system is designed to provide a standardized, evidence-based method for classifying and prioritizing emergency medical calls. By following the established script and questioning techniques, the dispatcher ensures that all critical information is gathered systematically, leading to the most accurate determinant code and thus the appropriate level of response. This adherence to protocol is ethically mandated to ensure equitable and effective emergency service delivery, minimizing harm and maximizing benefit for all callers. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the caller's emotional state or a superficial description of symptoms without systematically following the MPDS script is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a breach of ethical duty by potentially misclassifying the call, leading to delayed or inappropriate dispatch of resources. Such an action violates the core principles of public safety dispatch, which demand objective assessment and adherence to established best practices. Another incorrect approach, such as prematurely escalating the priority based on a single alarming word without further investigation, also risks misallocation of critical resources, potentially diverting them from a higher priority situation elsewhere. This demonstrates a lack of adherence to the systematic triage process mandated by the MPDS. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes protocol adherence. This involves actively listening to the caller while simultaneously navigating the MPDS script, using the structured questions to elicit necessary details. When faced with ambiguity, the dispatcher should rely on the protocol's built-in decision trees and, if necessary, consult with a supervisor or utilize available decision support tools. The focus must remain on gathering objective data to arrive at the correct determinant code, rather than being swayed by subjective interpretations or emotional cues alone. Question 11. The assessment process reveals that a dispatcher, when receiving a call reporting an unresponsive adult, prioritizes obtaining the caller's full name and address before initiating any pre-arrival instructions, even though the caller sounds distressed and mentions the patient is not breathing. Which of the following approaches best reflects the required adherence to emergency medical dispatch (MD) protocols and dispatcher liability considerations? Option A. Advise the caller to check for a pulse and breathing for an extended period before offering any specific instructions to ensure accuracy. Option B. Immediately provide CPR instructions while simultaneously gathering essential location and patient information and confirming the patient's unresponsiveness and lack of breathing. Option C. Provide general advice on keeping the patient comfortable and waiting for paramedics to arrive, without offering specific medical interventions. Option D. Continue to gather detailed demographic information from the caller, including insurance details, before proceeding with any medical instructions. The correct answer is B. Immediately provide CPR instructions while simultaneously gathering essential location and patient information and confirming the patient's unresponsiveness and lack of breathing. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common yet critical challenge in emergency medical dispatch (MD). The dispatcher must balance the urgency of the situation with the need for accurate information gathering and the provision of appropriate pre-arrival instructions. The caller's emotional state, potential for misinterpretation, and the inherent limitations of remote guidance create a complex environment where rapid, effective decision-making is paramount. The dispatcher's actions directly impact patient outcomes, and can have significant legal and ethical ramifications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes immediate, clear, and actionable instructions tailored to the caller's reported situation, while simultaneously gathering essential information for responding units. This aligns with EMD protocol principles that emphasize providing the highest level of care possible given the circumstances. Specifically, it adheres to guidelines that mandate the provision of life-saving instructions, such as CPR, when indicated by the caller's description of the patient's condition. This approach minimizes delay in critical interventions and ensures that responding personnel receive vital information. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that delays critical instructions while focusing solely on detailed patient history is a failure to adhere to EMD protocols. Regulations and best practices for EMD mandate that life-saving interventions, like CPR instructions, be initiated promptly when there is a reasonable indication of cardiac arrest or respiratory distress. Delaying these instructions can lead to irreversible harm or death, constituting a significant ethical and potentially legal failure. An approach that provides generic, nonspecific instructions without assessing the caller's ability to follow them or the specific nature of the emergency is also problematic. EMD protocols require a degree of assessment to ensure the instructions are appropriate and understandable to the caller. Providing instructions that are too complex or not relevant to the immediate situation can be ineffective and may even cause confusion or distress, hindering rather than helping. An approach that relies solely on the caller's self-diagnosis without attempting to gather objective information or provide guided assessment is a failure to meet EMD standards. While respecting the caller's perception is important, EMD protocols require dispatchers to actively guide the caller through a brief assessment to confirm the nature of the emergency and the patient's condition, thereby ensuring the correct protocols are activated and appropriate instructions are given. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this role must employ a structured decision-making process that integrates protocol adherence, situational awareness, and communication skills. This involves 1. Active listening to understand the caller's immediate concern. 2. Rapidly identifying critical indicators that necessitate immediate life-saving instructions based on established EMD protocols. 3. Clearly and concisely delivering those instructions, checking for understanding. 4. Simultaneously gathering essential information for responding units. 5. Maintaining composure and providing reassurance to the caller. This systematic approach ensures that both immediate patient needs and the requirements for effective emergency response are met. Question 12. The evaluation methodology shows that during a rapidly escalating regional wildfire event, the initial response is fragmented, with multiple fire departments and emergency medical services operating independently. Communication channels are inconsistent, and the availability of mutual aid resources is unclear due to a lack of real-time situational awareness across affected jurisdictions. Given these challenges, which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to established Registered Public Safety Leader (RPSL) principles for multi-agency coordination and Emergency Operations Center (EOC) operations? Option A. Immediately establish a unified command structure within the designated Regional Emergency Operations Center (EOC). Activate pre-established interoperable communication systems and formally request mutual aid based on a preliminary incident assessment. Option B. Delay the activation of the EOC and the formalization of interagency coordination until the incident has significantly worsened and the need for external support is undeniable. Option C. Focus solely on managing resources within one's own jurisdiction and wait for requests for assistance before engaging with other agencies. Option D. Instruct all responding agencies to continue operating under their existing command structures and to communicate directly with each other on an as-needed basis to share critical information. The correct answer is A. Immediately establish a unified command structure within the designated Regional Emergency Operations Center (EOC). Activate pre-established interoperable communication systems and formally request mutual aid based on a preliminary incident assessment. Explanation. This scenario presents a significant professional challenge due to the inherent complexities of multi-agency coordination during a large-scale, evolving public safety incident. The rapid onset of a natural disaster, coupled with the need to integrate diverse resources and communication systems from multiple jurisdictions, demands swift, accurate, and ethically sound decision-making under extreme pressure. The Registered Public Safety Leader, RPSL, must balance immediate operational needs with long-term strategic coordination, ensuring that all actions align with established protocols and legal frameworks governing mutual aid and emergency management. The correct approach emphasizes establishing a unified command structure within a pre-designated Emergency Operations Center, EOC, and leveraging established interoperable communication systems. This aligns with best professional practices and regulatory mandates for effective incident management. Specifically, it ensures adherence to principles of unity of command and span of control, critical for efficient resource allocation and operational clarity. The use of a designated EOC provides a central hub for information sharing, strategic planning, and resource management, facilitating seamless integration of mutual aid. Reliance on pre-existing interoperable communication protocols is paramount for preventing information silos and ensuring that critical data flows unimpeded between agencies, a cornerstone of effective regional coordination, as outlined in public safety leadership guidelines. An incorrect approach that prioritizes ad hoc communication channels and independent operational control by individual agencies represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses established mutual aid agreements and interagency communication protocols, potentially leading to duplicated efforts, conflicting directives, and inefficient resource deployment. Ethically, it fails to uphold the principle of collective responsibility for public safety. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the immediate needs of one's own jurisdiction without actively seeking or offering mutual aid, violates the spirit and letter of mutual aid agreements and demonstrates a lack of commitment to regional resilience. This can result in a failure to adequately address the overall incident impact and constrain interagency relationships. A third incorrect approach, delaying the activation of the EOC and the formalization of interagency coordination until the situation is overwhelming, demonstrates a failure to proactively implement established emergency management frameworks. This can lead to critical delays in information dissemination and resource mobilization, directly impacting the effectiveness of the response and potentially jeopardizing public safety. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, immediately activating established incident command structures and communication protocols. Second, assessing the incident's scope and resource needs to determine the necessity and extent of mutual aid. Third, engaging with designated liaisons from other agencies to establish unified command and information sharing mechanisms, ideally within a functional EOC. Fourth, continuously evaluating the effectiveness of coordination efforts and adapting strategies as the incident evolves, always prioritizing adherence to legal and ethical obligations. Question 13. Investigation of a new computer-aided dispatch (CAD) system for a public safety agency requires selecting a vendor. The agency is mandated to transition to next-generation 911 NG 911 capabilities, including enhanced location accuracy and the ability to receive text messages. Which vendor selection approach best aligns with the Registered Public Safety Leaders (RPSL) responsibilities and the regulatory framework? Option A. Opt for a vendor whose system is widely used in other jurisdictions, without independently verifying its specific compliance with the current jurisdiction's unique regulatory framework. Option B. Choose the vendor with the lowest bid, contingent on their promise to address any future regulatory compliance issues as they arise. Option C. Select the vendor whose proposed system demonstrably meets all current and anticipated regulatory requirements for NG 911, including robust data security, privacy protocols, and proven interoperability with existing emergency services infrastructure, supported by a clear upgrade path. Option D. Prioritize the vendor offering the most feature-rich system with the latest technological advancements, assuming it will eventually meet regulatory standards. The correct answer is C. Select the vendor whose proposed system demonstrably meets all current and anticipated regulatory requirements for NG 911, including robust data security, privacy protocols, and proven interoperability with existing emergency services infrastructure, supported by a clear upgrade path. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a significant professional challenge for a registered public safety leader, RPSL, due to the critical nature of emergency telecommunications and the potential for life or death consequences. The RPSL must balance the immediate need for effective communication during a crisis with the long-term implications of technology adoption, data security, and regulatory compliance. The rapid evolution of telecommunications, particularly with the advent of next-generation 911, NG 911, and its associated mapping and location technologies, introduces complexities in interoperability, data privacy, and the accuracy of location information, all of which are paramount for public safety. Ensuring that the chosen system not only meets current operational demands, but also adheres to the stringent regulatory framework governing public safety communications is a core responsibility. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive evaluation of potential NG 911 system providers, prioritizing those that demonstrate robust compliance with the established regulatory framework for public safety telecommunications in the relevant jurisdiction. This includes verifying that the proposed solutions meet or exceed mandated standards for data security, privacy, interoperability with existing emergency services infrastructure, and the accuracy and reliability of location data, especially in dynamic environments. The chosen provider must also offer clear roadmaps for future upgrades and support, ensuring long-term viability and continued compliance. This approach aligns with the RPSL duty to ensure the integrity and effectiveness of public safety communication systems, safeguarding both operational efficiency and public trust, while adhering to legal and ethical obligations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to prioritize the lowest cost solution, without a thorough assessment of its regulatory compliance and technical capabilities. This fails to meet the RPSL obligation to ensure the reliability and security of emergency services, potentially leading to system failures, data breaches, or non-compliance with mandated performance standards, which could have severe legal and ethical repercussions. Another incorrect approach would be to select a system based solely on the most advanced features advertised, without verifying its compatibility with existing infrastructure or its adherence to the specific regulatory requirements of the jurisdiction. This could result in an expensive, underutilized system that creates interoperability issues, hinders effective dispatch, and violates regulatory mandates regarding system integration and data handling. A third incorrect approach would be to delay the decision-making process indefinitely due to fear of technological obsolescence or the complexity of NG 911 implementation. This inaction directly compromises the public's ability to access emergency services effectively, particularly as older systems become less capable of handling modern communication methods like text to 911, and fails to meet the RPSL responsibility to proactively enhance public safety infrastructure. Professional reasoning. When faced with decisions regarding telecommunication systems for public safety, an RPSL should employ a structured decision-making framework. This framework begins with a thorough understanding of the current regulatory landscape and future mandates. Next, a comprehensive needs assessment should be conducted, identifying critical operational requirements and potential technological advancements. Subsequently, potential solutions should be rigorously evaluated against these requirements, with a strong emphasis on regulatory compliance, security, reliability, interoperability, and long-term support. Vendor due diligence is crucial, including verification of their track record and adherence to industry best practices and legal obligations. Finally, a cost-benefit analysis should be performed, ensuring that the chosen solution provides the best value in terms of operational effectiveness and public safety, without compromising on compliance or security. Question 14. What factors determine the ethical and operational priorities for a fire dispatch supervisor when faced with multiple, simultaneous, high-priority incidents requiring significant resource allocation, while also needing to maintain a reserve for potential future emergencies? Option A. Prioritizing the incident with the most visually dramatic impact and the highest number of initial calls, regardless of established resource allocation guidelines. Option B. Delaying significant resource allocation to the most critical current incidents to ensure a larger reserve is maintained for potential future, as yet unknown, emergencies. Option C. Unilaterally deploying available resources based on the supervisor's personal assessment of which incident poses the greatest immediate threat, bypassing established communication channels with incident commanders. Option D. Adherence to established fire dispatch protocols. The Incident Command System, ICS, principles for resource management, and direct communication with the incident commander to confirm resource needs and strategic objectives. The correct answer is D. Adherence to established fire dispatch protocols. The Incident Command System, ICS, principles for resource management, and direct communication with the incident commander to confirm resource needs and strategic objectives. Explanation. This scenario presents a significant ethical and operational challenge for a registered public safety leader, RPSL, in fire dispatch. The core dilemma lies in balancing immediate resource needs with the long-term strategic implications of resource allocation, all while adhering to established protocols and the Incident Command System, ICS. The RPSL must make a critical decision under pressure, where any choice carries potential consequences for public safety and operational efficiency. The challenge is amplified by the inherent uncertainty of evolving incidents and the need to maintain a robust response capability for future events. The correct approach prioritizes adherence to established fire dispatch protocols and the principles of the Incident Command System, ICS, when allocating resources. This ensures a standardized, systematic, and defensible decision-making process. By consulting the established resource allocation matrix, considering the incident's severity and projected needs based on initial reports, and communicating effectively with the incident commander, ICE, to confirm resource requirements, the RPSL upholds their ethical duty to provide the most effective and efficient response possible. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that mandate adherence to ICS and established operational procedures for public safety agencies, ensuring accountability and optimal use of limited resources. An incorrect approach that solely focuses on the immediate, overwhelming need of the largest incident, without considering the potential impact on other areas or the established protocols for resource deployment, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to undersourcing other critical incidents, violating the principle of equitable public safety. Another incorrect approach that involves bypassing established communication channels with the IC and unilaterally deploying resources based on personal judgment, without proper authorization or confirmation, undermines the ICS structure and creates a risk of miscommunication, duplication of effort, or critical gaps in response. This violates the regulatory requirement for clear command and control within the ICS framework. Finally, an approach that delays resource allocation due to an overemphasis on potential future incidents, without adequately addressing the current, escalating threat, demonstrates a failure to meet immediate public safety obligations and a disregard for the urgency of the situation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the incident's nature and severity, referencing established dispatch protocols and resource matrices. This should be followed by clear and concise communication with the incident commander to confirm resource needs and strategic objectives. The RPSL must then apply their knowledge of resource availability and deployment strategies, always within the established ICS framework, to make a reasoned and justifiable allocation decision. Continuous reassessment and adaptation based on evolving incident conditions and communication with the IC are paramount. Question 15. When evaluating the aftermath of a critical incident involving significant trauma, which of the following actions best demonstrates adherence to Registered Public Safety Leader, RPSL, responsibilities regarding critical incident stress management, CISM? Option A. Immediately convene a formal debriefing session facilitated by trained peer supporters to allow personnel to process their experiences and reactions. Option B. Suggest that personnel discuss their experiences informally with colleagues as needed. Option C. Prioritize the swift return to full operational duties, addressing any stress-related issues only if formal complaints are lodged. Option D. Encourage individual personnel to take time off if they feel overwhelmed, without formal intervention. The correct answer is A. Immediately convene a formal debriefing session facilitated by trained peer supporters to allow personnel to process their experiences and reactions. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the immediate and potentially long-lasting psychological impact of a critical incident on public safety personnel. The Registered Public Safety Leader, RPSL, must balance the need for rapid response to operational demands with the ethical and regulatory imperative to address the psychological well-being of their team. Careful judgment is required to ensure that interventions are timely, appropriate, and adhere to established protocols for critical incident stress management (CISM), thereby preventing the escalation of stress into more severe conditions and maintaining operational readiness and team cohesion. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a structured, evidence-based CISM intervention that is initiated promptly after the incident. This aligns with the principles of CISM, which emphasize early intervention to mitigate the effects of critical incident stress. By involving trained peer supporters and facilitating a debriefing process, the leader is actively engaging in recognized CISM techniques designed to help individuals process the event, understand their reactions, and develop coping strategies. This proactive stance is supported by the ethical duty of care inherent in leadership roles within public safety, aiming to protect the mental health of personnel and ensure their continued effectiveness and well-being. Regulatory frameworks for public safety leadership often mandate or strongly encourage such proactive stress management measures. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate operational resumption without acknowledging or addressing the psychological impact of the incident fails to meet the ethical and regulatory obligations for personnel welfare. This oversight can lead to delayed recognition of stress symptoms, increased risk of burnout, impaired decision-making, and potential long-term psychological harm, which could have significant implications for both individual officers and the organization. Another incorrect approach that relies on informal, ad hoc conversations rather than structured CISM interventions lacks the systematic approach necessary to effectively process critical incident stress. This can result in incomplete processing of the event, inadequate identification of stress symptoms, and a failure to provide appropriate support, potentially exacerbating the stress experienced by individuals. A third incorrect approach that postpones any form of stress management until formal complaints arise is reactive rather than proactive. This approach neglects the immediate need for support following a critical incident and risks allowing stress to manifest in detrimental ways before any intervention is considered, thereby failing to uphold the duty of care and potentially violating regulatory expectations for preventative mental health support. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a rapid assessment of the incident's potential psychological impact, followed by the immediate activation of the organization's CISM protocols. This includes identifying and engaging trained peer supporters, scheduling appropriate debriefing or diffusing sessions, and ensuring that all personnel involved are aware of available self-care resources and support mechanisms. The leader must remain vigilant for signs of ongoing stress and be prepared to facilitate further interventions as needed, always prioritizing the well-being of their team within the established regulatory and ethical guidelines. Question 16. Operational review demonstrates a need to enhance the decision-making framework for law enforcement dispatchers and supervisors during high-risk vehicle pursuits. Considering the specific regulatory framework for registered public safety leaders, RPSL, in this jurisdiction, which of the following approaches best ensures officer safety and public protection while adhering to established protocols? Option A. Allows supervisors to make pursuit termination decisions based solely on their personal experience and intuition, overriding established departmental policies if deemed necessary. Option B. Focus exclusively on apprehending the suspect as quickly as possible, prioritizing the capture over a comprehensive assessment of ongoing risks to the public and officers. Option C. Continuously assess the totality of circumstances, including the suspect's driving behavior, traffic conditions, the severity of the initial offense, and the potential for harm, to determine if the pursuit should be continued, modified, or terminated, in strict accordance with departmental vehicle pursuit management policy. Option D. Terminate any pursuit immediately if the initial offense is not a violent felony, regardless of the suspect's driving actions or the presence of other immediate dangers. The correct answer is C. Continuously assess the totality of circumstances, including the suspect's driving behavior, traffic conditions, the severity of the initial offense, and the potential for harm, to determine if the pursuit should be continued, modified, or terminated, in strict accordance with departmental vehicle pursuit management policy. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the registered public safety leader, RPSL, to balance immediate tactical needs with long-term strategic considerations, specifically concerning officer safety during a high-risk vehicle pursuit. The RPSL must make a rapid, informed decision that minimizes risk to the public, officers, and the fleeing suspect, while adhering to established protocols. The inherent unpredictability of pursuits, coupled with the potential for escalation, demands a nuanced understanding of risk assessment and decision-making under pressure. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment that integrates real-time information with established departmental policies and legal frameworks governing vehicle pursuits. This involves evaluating factors such as the severity of the initial offense, the suspect's driving behavior, traffic and environmental conditions, the presence of passengers, and the availability of alternative containment strategies. Adherence to the specific jurisdiction's vehicle pursuit management policy, which is designed to standardize decision-making and mitigate risks, is paramount. This approach ensures that the decision to continue, modify, or terminate the pursuit is based on a reasoned evaluation of evolving risks, aligning with the RPSL duty to protect life and property while upholding legal and ethical standards. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to solely focus on apprehending the suspect without a thorough, dynamic risk assessment. This failure to consider the broader implications of the pursuit, such as potential harm to uninvolved citizens or officers, directly contravenes the principles of responsible law enforcement and the specific mandates of vehicle pursuit management protocols designed to prevent unnecessary endangerment. It represents a failure to exercise due diligence and a disregard for the potential for unintended consequences. Another incorrect approach would be to terminate the pursuit solely based on the suspect's initial offense, regardless of their subsequent actions or the prevailing circumstances. This rigid adherence to a single factor, without considering the dynamic nature of a pursuit and the potential for the suspect to pose an immediate threat through their driving or other behaviors, can lead to missed opportunities for apprehension when it is safe to do so, or conversely, an unnecessary continuation of a pursuit that has become too dangerous. It demonstrates a lack of adaptive judgment and an incomplete understanding of the risk assessment process. A third incorrect approach would be to rely on anecdotal evidence or personal experience rather than established protocols and objective risk factors. This subjective approach can lead to inconsistent and potentially dangerous decisions, as it bypasses the standardized, evidence-based framework that vehicle pursuit management policies are built upon. It undermines the integrity of the decision-making process and exposes the department to legal and ethical challenges. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the governing policies and legal requirements. When faced with a dynamic situation like a vehicle pursuit, the RPSL must continuously gather and analyze information, assess the associated risks against established criteria, and make a decision that aligns with the principles of proportionality and necessity. This involves consulting with officers involved, considering available resources, and being prepared to justify the decision based on the documented risk assessment and adherence to policy. Question 17. The risk matrix shows a caller reporting a suspicious noise and a feeling of unease from a residential address, with no immediate indication of violence or direct threat to life, but the caller sounds genuinely distressed. As a registered public safety leader, RPSL, overseeing dispatch, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action? Option A. Advise the caller to call back if the situation escalates and disconnect the call to manage call volume. Option B. Immediately dispatch multiple high-priority units, including tactical response teams, to the location due to the caller's distress. Option C. Ask the caller to describe the suspicious noise in detail and wait for a definitive description of a crime before dispatching any units. Option D. Initiate a low-priority patrol unit to investigate the area for a welfare check, while keeping the caller on the line for further information. The correct answer is D. Initiate a low-priority patrol unit to investigate the area for a welfare check, while keeping the caller on the line for further information. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a significant challenge for an RPSL in emergency dispatch due to the inherent pressure of time-sensitive decision-making, the potential for misinterpretation of critical information, and the direct impact on public safety. The RPSL must balance the need for immediate action with the requirement for accurate information, gathering and adherence to established protocols. The ambiguity of the caller's distress and the potential for a false alarm versus a genuine emergency necessitates careful judgment to avoid both underresponse and overresponse, each carrying severe consequences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach demonstrates best professional practice by prioritizing the immediate safety of the caller and the public while adhering to established protocols for emergency dispatch. This involves actively listening, asking clarifying questions to ascertain the nature and severity of the emergency, and initiating appropriate resource dispatch based on the gathered information and established response guidelines. This aligns with the core responsibilities of an RPSL to ensure efficient and effective emergency response, minimizing harm and maximizing the chances of a positive outcome. Regulatory frameworks for emergency services emphasize prompt and accurate assessment, appropriate resource allocation, and adherence to standard operating procedures to ensure public safety and accountability. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves dismissing the call due to a perceived lack of immediate, overt danger. This fails to acknowledge the potential for escalating situations or the caller's inability to articulate the full extent of their distress. Ethically, this is a failure to provide due care and diligence. Regulationally, it could violate mandates for responding to all credible emergency calls and conducting thorough assessments. Another incorrect approach is to immediately dispatch all available high-priority units without further information. Appearing decisive, this can lead to resource depletion for genuine, potentially more critical incidents elsewhere, and may be an unnecessary escalation if the situation is minor. This violates principles of efficient resource management and proportionality, which are often implicitly or explicitly part of public safety regulations. It also risks creating a false alarm scenario, which can have negative consequences for public trust and resource availability. A third incorrect approach is to engage in prolonged, non-essential questioning that delays the dispatch of appropriate resources. This prioritizes information gathering over immediate life-saving action when the initial information suggests a potential emergency. This is a direct contravention of the urgency required in emergency dispatch and can be seen as a failure to act with reasonable speed. A key ethical and regulatory expectation. Professional reasoning. Professionals in emergency dispatch should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with active listening and immediate threat assessment. This involves utilizing established questioning techniques to quickly gather critical information: who, what, where, when, why, how. The information gathered is then cross-referenced with established protocols and threat matrices to determine the appropriate level of response. Continuous reassessment of the situation based on new information is crucial. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are not only swift, but also informed, proportionate, and aligned with both ethical obligations and regulatory requirements for public safety. Question 18. The performance metrics show a significant increase in transmission times and a higher frequency of non-essential radio chatter during recent simulated emergency exercises. This trend is impacting the clarity and efficiency of communication channels. As a registered public safety leader, RPSL, what is the most appropriate immediate course of action to address this issue? Option A. Advise senior leadership that the observed performance metrics are within acceptable operational tolerances for simulated exercises and do not warrant immediate intervention. Option B. Recommend an immediate upgrade to the radio system's hardware and software to improve transmission speed and reduce background noise, assuming the current technology is the primary cause of the performance dip. Option C. Conduct a mandatory refresher training session for all personnel on radio etiquette, clear and concise communication protocols, and the proper use of radio codes and signals, emphasizing the importance of brevity and relevance during emergency transmissions. Option D. Implement a strict policy of radio silence for all non-critical communications during exercises, requiring explicit authorization for any transmission beyond essential status updates. The correct answer is C. Conduct a mandatory refresher training session for all personnel on radio etiquette, clear and concise communication protocols, and the proper use of radio codes and signals, emphasizing the importance of brevity and relevance during emergency transmissions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in public safety communications, balancing the need for rapid information dissemination during an emergency with the critical requirement for clear, concise, and interoperable communication. The performance metrics highlight a potential breakdown in adherence to established protocols, which can have severe consequences in a real-time crisis. The professional challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the communication breakdown and implementing corrective actions that ensure future effectiveness and compliance with regulatory frameworks governing public safety radio use. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach focuses on reinforcing the fundamental principles of radio etiquette and clear communication as mandated by public safety operational guidelines. This involves a review of transmission protocols, ensuring that all personnel understand the importance of brevity, accuracy, and the avoidance of unnecessary chatter. It directly addresses the observed performance metric by targeting the behavior that likely led to the metric's deviation. This approach aligns with the ethical imperative to maintain operational efficiency and public safety through effective communication, and it is supported by regulatory frameworks that emphasize standardized communication procedures for emergency responders. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach focuses solely on the technical aspects of the radio system without addressing the human element of communication. While technology is crucial, communication failures often stem from user error or a lack of adherence to established protocols. This approach fails to recognize that even the most advanced system is ineffective if not used correctly. It also risks overlooking potential interoperability issues that might be exacerbated by poor communication practices. Another incorrect approach involves implementing a blanket policy of increased radio silence without understanding the specific nature of the communication breakdown. While brevity is important, complete silence can hinder vital information exchange during an emergency, potentially leading to delayed responses or misinformed decisions. This approach lacks the nuanced understanding required for effective emergency communication and may violate guidelines that promote timely and accurate information sharing. A third incorrect approach is to dismiss the performance metrics as insignificant, assuming that the communication issues are minor or temporary. This demonstrates a failure to appreciate the critical role of communication in public safety operations and a disregard for established performance standards. It ignores the potential for minor communication lapses to escalate into significant operational problems, thereby failing to uphold the duty of care and the regulatory obligation to maintain effective communication channels. Professional reasoning. Professionals in public safety leadership must adopt a systematic approach to address communication performance issues. This involves 1. Data analysis, thoroughly reviewing performance metrics to identify specific patterns or deviations. 2. Root cause analysis, investigating the underlying reasons for the observed issues, considering both technical and human factors. 3. Protocol reinforcement, re-educating personnel on established communication protocols, radio etiquette, and the importance of clear, concise messaging. 4. Interoperability assessment, ensuring that communication systems and practices are interoperable across different agencies and disciplines. 5. Continuous improvement, regularly monitoring performance and adapting strategies to maintain optimal communication effectiveness. This structured approach ensures that interventions are targeted, effective, and compliant with all relevant regulations and ethical standards. Question 19. Strategic planning requires an organizational structure that optimizes communication, decision-making, and accountability within a public safety context. Considering the need for both rapid response and adherence to established protocols, which organizational design principle best supports the registered public safety leader's mandate for effective and compliant operations? Option A. Highly decentralized model where operational teams have maximum autonomy in decision-making and communication, with minimal central oversight. Option B. A matrix structure that allows for dual reporting lines and project-based team formation, regardless of established departmental boundaries. Option C. An organization that prioritizes informal communication networks and cross-functional team collaboration above all formal reporting structures. Option D. A hierarchical structure with clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and spans of control, supported by departmentalization based on functional areas of public safety. The correct answer is D. A hierarchical structure with clearly defined roles, responsibilities, and spans of control, supported by departmentalization based on functional areas of public safety. Explanation. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation because it requires balancing the need for efficient communication and rapid decision-making in a public safety context with the imperative to maintain clear lines of authority and accountability, as mandated by the Registered Public Safety Leader (RPSL) framework. The RPSL responsibility extends to ensuring that organizational structures support operational effectiveness while adhering to established protocols and ethical standards. The challenge lies in designing or adapting an organizational structure that fosters collaboration and swift information flow without compromising the integrity of command and control. The correct approach, emphasizing a clear hierarchical structure with well-defined spans of control and departmentalization, aligned with core public safety functions, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the RPSL duty to establish and maintain an organization that is both responsive and compliant. Regulatory frameworks for public safety leadership are not explicitly detailed here as per the prompt's constraint to a specific, unnamed jurisdiction, universally emphasize the importance of clear command structures for effective incident management and resource allocation. This structure ensures that directives are understood, responsibilities are unambiguous, and accountability can be traced, thereby minimizing confusion and potential errors during critical operations. Ethical considerations also support this, as clear structures prevent situations where individuals might act without proper authorization or where blame becomes diffused. An incorrect approach that prioritizes extreme decentralization without robust oversight mechanisms would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to fragmented decision-making, inconsistent application of protocols, and a breakdown in accountability, directly contravening the principles of effective public safety leadership. Such a failure would likely violate implicit or explicit regulatory requirements for operational coherence and public trust. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on team building and collaboration without regard for hierarchical structure, risks undermining the chain of command. While collaboration is vital, it must operate within a defined organizational framework to ensure that decisions are authoritative and that resources are managed effectively. This could lead to operational inefficiencies and a failure to meet statutory obligations for public safety provision. A third incorrect approach, characterized by overly complex communication channels that bypass established reporting lines, would similarly create confusion and delay, potentially jeopardizing public safety and violating regulatory expectations for clear and efficient communication in emergency situations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the organization's mission, the nature of its operation, and the regulatory environment. Leaders must consider how different organizational designs impact communication, decision-making speed, accountability, and resource utilization. They should then design or adapt structures that promote clarity, efficiency, and compliance, ensuring that any modifications are implemented with clear communication and training to all personnel. This involves a continuous evaluation of the structure's effectiveness against operational needs and regulatory standards. Question 20. Process analysis reveals inconsistencies in the quality assurance scoring of emergency calls within the dispatch center, leading to varied feedback provided to individual dispatchers. Supervisors are observing a disconnect between audit scores and perceived dispatcher performance in real-time situations. What is the most effective approach to address these QA/QI discrepancies and enhance overall dispatch quality? Option A. Increase the number of calls audited per dispatcher per shift to gather more data points for evaluation. Option B. Conduct a thorough review and calibration of the call auditing process, including a detailed examination of scoring criteria, auditor training, and the consistency of feedback delivery to dispatchers. Option C. Rely on supervisors' subjective observations and informal discussions with dispatchers to identify areas for improvement and training needs. Option D. Introduce a new, advanced performance metric that measures dispatcher response times to specific types of calls, without altering the current auditing system. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough review and calibration of the call auditing process, including a detailed examination of scoring criteria, auditor training, and the consistency of feedback delivery to dispatchers. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in public safety dispatch. balancing the need for efficient call handling with the imperative of providing high-quality, accurate information and support to callers in distress. Professional challenge lies in identifying systemic issues within the call auditing process that might be leading to inconsistent performance evaluations and potentially impacting the effectiveness of dispatcher training and support. Careful judgment is required to move beyond individual performance and address the underlying quality assurance framework. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the root cause of the observed inconsistencies. By focusing on a comprehensive review of the call auditing process, including the calibration of auditors, the clarity of scoring criteria, and the consistency of feedback delivery, it aims to create a robust and reliable QA/QI system. This aligns with the ethical obligation to ensure that dispatchers are evaluated fairly and that training and coaching are based on objective, consistent standards, ultimately leading to improved public safety outcomes. This approach also implicitly supports the continuous improvement cycle mandated by effective public safety operations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing the volume of audited calls without addressing the quality or consistency of the auditing process itself is a failure. This would likely lead to more data, but not necessarily better insights, potentially overwhelming supervisors, and not resolving the core issue of inconsistent evaluation. It fails to meet the ethical standard of providing accurate and actionable feedback. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing a new, complex performance metric without first ensuring the foundational auditing process is sound is also professionally unacceptable. This risks introducing further confusion and may not accurately reflect dispatcher performance if the underlying audit data is flawed. It bypasses the necessary step of ensuring the integrity of the QA system before layering on new measurement tools, violating the principle of systematic improvement. A further incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence from supervisors rather than structured data from the call auditing process to identify training needs is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This approach is subjective, prone to bias, and does not provide the objective basis required for effective performance management and training development. It fails to uphold the standards of evidence-based practice crucial in public safety. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a systematic, data-driven approach. First, clearly define the desired outcomes of the QA/QI program. Second, analyze the current processes for any identified gaps or inconsistencies using available data. Third, prioritize interventions that address the most critical systemic issues. Fourth, implement changes and monitor their impact rigorously. Finally, engage in continuous feedback loops to refine the process and ensure ongoing effectiveness and compliance with relevant standards.